of Brant County Council for March the 25th. Yeah, there you go. First thing on the agenda is going to be, first of all, I just want to let you know that this is the first night that I've been working with this computer to tabulate votes and all kinds of other things. So if I look a little confused, it's because I am, but we're going to give it a go anyway. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to ask the clerk whether she's taken attendance. And she has. Second thing on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and Councillor Chambers has that.
As we gather, we acknowledge that we meet on the lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Six Nations of the Grand River, and the traditional territory of the Adirondack. We remind ourselves that the County of Brant is situated on lands that are full of rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people today. We recognize the significance of their contributions to the past, present, and future of this land. As a county, we have a shared responsibility for the stewardship of the land on which we live and work, and a commitment to the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. We commit to continuing learning, reflecting on our past, and working in allyship.
Thanks, Councillor Chambers. The third thing on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Could I call for a mover and a seconder, please? Do we have our first glitch?
No, there you go.
Oh, I have a mover and a seconder. That's slick. Is there any additions or anything you want to do to the agenda? Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, seeing as the writ dropped following the publication of our agenda, I'd like to defer my resolution, that's 12-2, to the next regular council meeting following the federal election.
Seeking a seconder. Councillor Coleman. Everyone's clear? Call for the vote. Yeah. Just let me know when I'm the one that's slowing things down.
Opening the vote. We're waiting for Councillor Garneau to vote.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, my ballot didn't pop up.
One second.
The next vote could be to just destroy the computers in front of us and just raise our hands.
Would you like to confirm your vote verbally? To make it easier.
I can do that. I'm in favor.
Thank you. The vote is now closing. And the motion carries.
Thank you. Number 4 on the agenda is declaration of pecuniary interest. Does anyone have one? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 5, which is our delegations. Oh. Didn't? I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, is that what happened?
We can vote on the amendment, yeah.
Okay, call the vote on the amendment.
Opening voting. Councillor Garneau, still no pop-up. Okay, would you like to vote in favor? Okay.
In favor.
And the vote is now closing. And the motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on now to 5.1, which is our delegations. The first person is Steve and Mike from Mount Pleasant Firefighters. You want to come up to the podium? You're both going to come up, Mike? Just give us your, one of you, our name and address for the clerk, please. Wait a minute, I have to call for a mover and a seconder. I have it, thank you. Okay.
My name is Steve Giles with Unrepresented Fire, Station 5, Mount Pleasant. Let me address me. 291 Bateman Line. Okay, that's better. Steve Giles, County Brant Fire, Station 5, Mount Pleasant. Address 291 Bateman Line in Brant, Ontario. So, dear Council, it's time again for the Mount Pleasant Firefighters to host its yearly Wing Night. This year's event will be September 6th. We host approximately 300 guests split between 2 seatings and takeout. And the event will take place at the Mount Pleasant Community Hall with all proceeds going to various local fundraising initiatives. And to procure a liquor license, we must provide a letter of designation of municipal significance. So we look forward to the support of Council and, of course, thanks and for your continued support.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the delegation? Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a question, but a comment. Put a dig in for your pancake breakfast too while you're there.
Thank you.
When's your pancake breakfast?
So pancake breakfast is at the Fire Hall on May 4th, and it's very well supported with the community, and we usually use this. Last year we used to support the proceeds to the Optimist Clubs, and usually a kid will get a brand new bike out of it. So it's May 4th at the Fire Hall.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions to the delegation? Seeing none, call the vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, Councillor Miller?
I have a question.
Oh, Councillor Miller has a question before we call the vote.
Not to the delegation, maybe to staff. We also have another request of a similar nature under communications tonight. And I'm just wondering, I don't ever recall, maybe we have, but I don't recall turning one of these down. And I'm just wondering, is this not something that could be delegated to staff and we only see it if it's a controversial item?
Allison?
Thank you through you, Your Worship. Certainly we can. It's not currently in our delegated authority, but we can certainly make that change. It would just be an amendment to the bylaw, and we can bring that back next cycle.
Yeah, we do move things over over the years as other things come onto our plate. I'm just, like I say, I don't recall turning one down. So it's always in the purview of council to turn one down if we had complaints from neighbors or something like that. So something I think staff could take on.
Does anyone have any problem with the process to direct staff to put it somewhere else so that it doesn't come before council? It just gets put into staff duty? No concerns? Okay, then I'm going to go back and call the vote on the amendment. No, not on the amendment, sorry, on the delegation.
Opening the vote. Just waiting for Councillor Chambers. Okay, closing the vote. And the vote carries.
Thank you. Takes us to number 5.2 on the agenda, which is the John Noble Home. What I'd like to do here is, well, first of all, get a mover and a seconder, please. Okay, thank you. What I'd like to do too is I'd like to have, make a motion to give them more time to speak. It's kind of a lengthy presentation, so do we need to vote for that separately? Okay, call the vote on that for giving them more than 10 minutes.
Opening the vote. Closing the vote. And that carries.
Thank you. So the Anna Gora and Raquel are going to come up and speak on behalf of the John Noble Home. These girls have been put into a position due to a lot of circumstances at the John Noble Home. So they're fairly new to their position, so they have a lot to tell you, but they are brand new. And the builders that are helping us with the John Noble Home are both online tonight. I think they're online, I can't. The builders? Yeah. Anyway, go ahead and see what you can tell us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Anna Gora, and I am an acting administrator for John Noble Home. Today, I am at the front of you kindly requesting additional funds to be allocated towards Bell Line redevelopment project in amount of $1,600,000 and respectively with the county share of $444,800. Also, I would like to kindly request the surplus budget we anticipated for John Noble Home of 2024 to be allocated back to the project, respectively with the county share. And today I would like to take some time and say thank you very much to our HDR consulting company, which really helped John Noble Home navigate this multi-million project and to keep us very lean when it comes to timelines and also when it comes to budget. And on that note, through you, councillors and Mr. Mayor, I would like to introduce Caitlin and Jeff from HDR company, and they can tell you more about this project, and also they can answer all the questions you might have in regards to the ask today. So thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. I think they're online, aren't they?
We are here. I'm not in the same position as Caitlin, so I'm not sure if Caitlin can confirm that she is online as well.
I don't see either of you, but I can hear you.
Good. I'm not sure if you hear Caitlin as well. Unfortunately, I can't hear her.
Okay. Caitlin's not there, I don't think, but we can see and hear you.
Okay. Then that is okay. I'm not sure if she can hear. I know that she's calling in, so is there a separate... Oh, I do see a phone number popping up here now.
She's here now.
She's muted.
Okay, wonderful. Caitlin, are you able to confirm your audio is working? So we have structured this as a presentation where we do bounce back and forth between one another.
Yeah. I don't see Caitlin. I think you're on mute now. This is going tremendously. I'm really
Apologies
impressed.
for this. Are you able to unmute Caitlin by chance?
Yep, there she goes.
Good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
We can.
Oh, excellent. I can hear you the whole time.
Okay, sorry about those technical difficulties. If you don't mind, we do have a presentation that we would like to share. So I am going to share my screen here. And if you can confirm that you're seeing my screen, that would be wonderful.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. So I did want to begin by introducing ourselves. Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. My name is Jeff Salmon. I'm with HDR Architecture Associates, Inc. I am a professional architect, and I've been working on the construction advisory services for the John Noble home and the Belcourt redevelopment and sprinkler project overview. On the line, I also have Caitlin Rocker, who is our project manager, and together we'd like to take you through this presentation. So with that in mind, we wanted to begin by outlining the project stakeholders for those who might not be familiar. On the owner's side, John Noble Home is represented by Anna Gore, who's the acting administrator, and Edward Owen, who is the director of facilities. There's also the committee of management that is being chaired by Councillor McAlpine, and the County of Brant and City of Brantford are participants as funding partners in the project. On the consultant side of things, we have G Architects, who are acting as the prime architect, and a sub to them is Manticon Engineers, who are covering the structural, mechanical, electrical, and civil engineering of the project. There's also HDR, ourselves, and we are providing the construction advisory services as well as project management services to the home. Recently onboarded onto the project is CDML, who are providing the commissioning agent services. The contractor that's been retained through a construction management contract is BDA, and through that contract, they have a number of subcontractors working for them. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Caitlin to talk us through the funding summary.
Thank you, Jeff. So the funding summary that is shown before you, this represents all of the capital contributions to the Belcourt and sprinkler system project to date. This is made up of a combination of a variety of private and public stakeholders. The Ministry of Long-Term Care has contributed to the Belcourt redevelopment project from a planning grant and construction grant perspective. There is still two outstanding contributions from the Ministry of Long-Term Care that will be forthcoming. One of them for $996,000, and that will be released upon achievement of substantial performance. And then upon occupancy, at the bottom there, you can see that the ministry will be providing debenture payments for the home over a 25-year period, and this money is expected to flow in the spring of 2026, and it's $14.79 million. The total capital contributions of the project that we are requesting today is $29,934,734 and 31 cents. This brings forward a 2025 funding request of $1.6 million. As it stands right now, the $29.93 million will be offset by the $14.79 million that will be flowing upon occupancy, and the variance in contributions have been made up between a combination of funding flow between both the City of Brantford and the County of Brant.
So to support the funding request, we wanted to highlight that there were 7 change orders due to unforeseen conditions that have both impacted the critical path, pushing out the completion date by roughly 12 months on the project, while also having had a budgetary impact as well. You can see from the list that these relate to a variety of items, such as asbestos abatement, which was uncovered during the demolition of the building, existing building in a number of concealed areas. Delays also occurred due to structural interferences uncovered at existing piers and the foundation, as well as the need to implement shoring and reinforce and make safe the existing roof structure above the chapel. These represent 7 of just over 80 approved and pending change orders on the project to date. The result of these 7 in particular saw schedule impacts extending the baseline schedule for substantial completion from April 2nd, 2025 to January 28th, 2026. Through negotiations with the contractor around these delays and the contract conversion, a reduction of 2 months was achieved, bringing the new substantial completion date to November 28th, 2025. Worth noting is that the sprinkler project was added in addition to the Belcourt redevelopment construction and occurred concurrently, resulting in approximately $700,000 in costs and 7 months to deliver. So Caitlin is going to take us through the consultant and hard construction costs.
Mr. Mayor, before,
Councillor Pierce?
yeah, sorry, point of order. I ask 2 things? First of all, if they could speak closer to their mics, because I think we're having troubles hearing them. And second of all, can we get that presentation on the full screen, please?
Can you make that presentation any bigger for us? It's
I believe it's full screen for me. This is as large as I can make it on my side.
okay.
I did also distribute a copy of this to the clerk's office, if it's possible for the clerk to pull it up or distribute to the committee as well.
Members of council have a copy of it in front of them, so they'll be able to read it a little bit easier. But people sitting in the council chamber here won't be able to see the figures. It's pretty small.
Is that something that council can assist with?
That's a little bit better, but it's still pretty hard to read. But anyway, I think that's okay. We can keep moving.
So I'll do my best to highlight each of the various line items within the Belcourt and sprinkler project budget. I can appreciate it may be difficult to see each line item, and I apologize for that. Where I've captured this data is in 2 big categories on the screen so far. So category A is consulting services, and this represents all the costs associated with delivering consulting services on the project, both historically and what will be required to bring it to completion. And so these consist of consultants that have participated on the project but are no longer active, as in some of their services were no longer required. And then the ongoing participants, which Jeff had highlighted at the beginning, which consists of HGR, G-Architect, Maticon, and now our newly onboarded commissioning consultant. These consulting services are fixed agreements that are in place to support the project. Now, Section B represents Belcourt specifically, the construction costs. So I'll define those as hard construction costs. And what we've captured here is fixed costs, both for costs incurred to date and costs that have been contractually agreed to between John Noble Home and BDA. But there are also 2 line items that will continue to fluctuate from now until the project has been substantially closed. And that is both the approved change orders and the pending change orders. These lines, you will see variances in future reporting. Change orders are presented on the project and approved, then they become moved to the approved column, and then those that are being carried forward, further investigated or reviewed, asking for additional information, those are carried under pending. So these represent the majority of the costs on the project to date. Section C, it is worth noting, and I represented it here, is the sprinkler project cost. And the sprinkler project did not have sufficient budget to deliver the sprinkler project in its entirety. And there was a lot of extension of services that were provided by the consulting team at no additional cost to John Noble Home as a result of the interest of supporting both the project and the client. And so we've kind of bundled these as if they were just a change order off the primary project, but contractually, the sprinkler project has been outlined and executed as its own independent contract, and it has had a total construction cost of $615,500. Now, if I can ask Jeff for the next slide. Now I really want to dive into the miscellaneous owner's costs. And part of the reason that we're here today to discuss the 2025 funding request. All of the costs that I've outlined on the previous slide are contracted and committed costs to date. And we're in a position at this time that the home is still obligated to provide owner costs or owner supplied items. And this consists of a variety of things, and I've itemized them on the screen, but I'll call them out if it's difficult to read. So some of this pertains to signage, and then we have a big bucket called furniture, fixtures, and equipment. But this is everything from the resident room furniture, common lounge furniture, serveries or eating or dining room furniture. It also includes the base house system infrastructure, so this includes IT, security, nurse call, all of these obligations fall under the owner to deliver. And at this time, John Noble Home and Edward, acting as the director of facilities, has been in the process of procuring quotes and vendors from vendors and suppliers to finalize these estimates. Known numbers have been captured on here to date, and then as estimates are finalized, then I'll update this information. And this serves as the basis of our need to approve 2025 funding requests so that the home can go and proceed to engage these various vendor and supplier or owner-specific contract requirements.
So further to what Caitlin was saying, we have a list of these required vendor agreements that are yet to be executed. However, they are being worked on so that they are in a place pending the approval of this 2025 funding request. Caitlin has already outlined many of those items, so I won't delve into more detail in the interest of time here, but I will note that the final selection process is anticipated to be completed by April 1st, with orders being placed by May 1st, pending this approval. Caitlin, do you want to talk us through the change order law?
With respect to the change orders, we'll try to keep it high level and tie it back to the 7 major drivers that Jeff identified at the very beginning. Those 7 drivers both had a financial impact and a schedule impact. From a schedule perspective, it resulted in a 1-year or 12-month delay to the project. That has implications both from a financial perspective for the time and material, the laborers, the general requirements of services that the contractor is providing, and they form the basis of the primary implications to the project. Those 2 categories of B and C, so B being design related and C being unforeseen conditions, are the categories that we've identified or described those 7 major drivers. What we try to do from a management perspective of managing the project costs and changes as they come through is to categorize them under various categories. There's 7 here, just so that we have an appreciation and understanding of the root cause or drivers for these changes. And like when they, as you can have seen in the terms of the 7 major drivers, all of which fell under unforeseen conditions, which has made it more challenging to manage both from a schedule and a cost perspective.
Thank you. And to wrap our presentation, we wanted to provide a bit of a look forward in terms of timelines and upcoming work on this project. So in 2025, we're providing a quick 3-month look ahead, which is going to include items such as the construction of the roof structure, interior partitions, and electrical and plumbing rough-ins. Towards the end of 2025, as mentioned before, we have the new substantial completion date, which is set for November 28th. As we wrap up 2025 and move into 2026, we will be working with the ministry to submit initial and final occupancy plans, provide notification of the total completion date, while the home conducts mock resident trials for staff training, and the commissioning agent CDML completes their final commissioning of systems. This will yield an anticipated opening and admission of first resident in February of 2026. And that concludes our presentation. We're open to receiving questions.
Thank you. I know it must be hard for people trying to catch on in the chamber here, but it was a little difficult to read and understand. But hopefully, councillors have everything in front of them and they have some questions for the delegation. No questions, Councillor Bell.
Comment, I'll make it later. That's okay.
Councillor McAlpine.
Same thing. I have some comments.
Okay, are there any questions, Councillor Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is to anybody that can answer it, whether it's HDR or John Noble Home Committee. When this project first came on board, we had a certain price. We approved it. Then we seen the administrator come before us and ask for more money. Then the administrator came back and asked for more money, and I think this is the fourth time that we've seen people come and ask for more money. My question is, how do we stop this? I understand it's important what we're doing, but at the same time, we're not exactly flush with cash either these days. So how does are we guaranteed that this price won't go up? And I'm just because I know there was talk of going to a stipulated price option for the contract. Has that been done? And is this the guaranteed price? That's my first question.
I can speak to that, Councillor Miller. So I can say there's no guarantees in life. I'm just going to be direct with you. We did convert the contract, and so the contract is now functioning as a stip contract. The way that it works, the CCPC 5B has a clause in it that if you execute that clause, you're still managing the contract with the supplementary conditions and the general conditions that it contains, but you're now doing it with under a fixed price approach. And so that did occur. That happened in February, and that actually was one of the major priorities of HDR, John Noble Home, and your consulting team almost the last 7 months in terms of exercises to work through the 7 delay claims from the contractor to try to get to a place that we could agree on from a financial perspective and also from a timeline perspective. So as it stands right now, the contractor did agree to contract the schedule by 4 months. We also essentially negotiated down a price of almost $1 million. And what we executed and brought forward to the committee was in the best interest of John Noble Home to, as much as possible, from a risk mitigation standpoint, transfer costs to the contractor. There's always the potential for unforeseen conditions to arise throughout the remaining of the construction process, and we can only manage those as best as possible. But as it stands right now, I mean, respectfully, I can't speak to the historic app, as we were not on the project at that time, but I can also acknowledge that the sprinkler project was a significant contributor to both the cost and time and efforts of delivering the Belcourt project, not only from the home's perspective, but also from the consultants and the contractors, because we've now asked them to carry 2 projects concurrently, and that required a lot more coordination and time and effort on all parties. So I'm hoping at least it gives an appreciation. We are very committed to managing these costs. We have tried to bring forward our, using industry knowledge and industry experience, our best understanding and estimate of our foreshadowing of what the cost could be, and we've also tried to secure all of the costs we are capable in terms of under contract so that we can try to best protect the home from cost escalation in the future.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the honest answer, and we'll go with that. Now, I understand not everything is under our control. We had COVID thrown in there. We had high construction costs. The inflation went up a lot for that. My second question, and I need some help with this one, because this is coming up later on.
Councillor Miller, just because I know it was small on the screen, but when we talk about unforeseen or unknown conditions, and I would say Councillor Carpenter spoke extremely clearly on this last week, the reality is, like, even the Jella classroom project, the reinforce, like the structural reinforcement, the asbestos and abatement that was found within the home, like that is significant cost, schedule implication. And it's unfortunate, but it's also sometimes the realities of dealing with an existing facility. So I know COVID was also a driver, but we're also trying to manage existing building conditions is what I want to communicate.
Okay, thank you. This comes up later on in our package, and I wanted to ask, well, we got people from the John Noble Home here. There's 3 resolutions that were approved, A, B, and C. B being that there's a $1.6 million request for capital funding. And then Resolution C says, and I cannot understand it, so that's why I'm asking, that the City of Brantford and the County of Brant be requested the approval to keep any surplus for year 2024 to offset additional costs related to the construction. Is that the John Noble Homes surplus from 2024?
So I can speak to that. I know that and our others can also speak to that. But as it stands right now, the Director of Finance and Anna have worked to review the 2024 operating costs, and there appears to be approximately a $600,000 surplus. And I mean, they can provide you with an exhaustive list as to the reasons for that, because I know that they've given me many examples. But at this time, they were just waiting for the audit to be conducted in April to validate the exact number, to put forward the true number to the city and county for that request, and to try to reallocate those funds to support the project in its delivery.
Okay, that's what I thought, but just the way it's worded, I couldn't understand it, and I don't know how anybody could understand the way it was written. So, thank you for that clarification.
You're most welcome.
Councillor Garneau, you had a question before we have comments? You're okay? Then we'll go back to Councillor Bell and then Councillor McAlpine.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's worthwhile reflecting on the fact that this is a $30 million project. We have never built a $30 million project in the county. The staff of John Noble Home, good as they are, don't have the skills in project management, don't have the experience in project management, which is why we asked HDR to come along, and they've been incredibly helpful. They have managed to draw down the requests of the main contractor for extra costs by, I think, close to $1 million. So they're really paying their way. But this is a consequence of the way in which these projects are funded. The provincial government said, we will give you money as long as you commit to the project by whenever. And they asked us to commit to the project well before we'd had the time to actually examine and prepare for the project itself. So a lot of the things that we found since we started the project, we might have identified had we had more time prior to having been forced to commit to the project. That's why there are 80 plus change orders. That's appalling for a project. It really is too many. When we did agree the budget for this project, I advocated for twice the level of contingency that was already in the project, and thankfully everybody agreed to that. So we started off with $2 and a bit million of contingency. But even then, we're going to end up with a request for $1.6 million more. So there's some learning and some feedback to be given to the provincial government about the way in which they sponsor these projects and encourage us to build them. But we are hopefully through the worst of that. There is only $110,000 left of the contingency, and that includes us giving the 1.6 million that's currently being asked for now. So it is tight, but many of the things that caused us to overrun are now behind us. It's not to say that there won't be some more to come, but having converted this project to essentially a stipulated price, then the exposure that we have is much reduced. And thank you to HDR for doing that.
Thank you. Councillor McAlpine.
Along those same lines that Councillor Bell has said, that I really appreciate the work that HDR has done on this project, and along with Anna and the staff really stepping in and making this project go along. I'm going to back up to Councillor Miller's comments. I think, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but because this is kind of before my time involvement on the John Noble home, but when the project started with the G architects, they were looking at possibly 3 different versions. So they started out initially just renovating the 10 beds, and then they looked at the possibility of redoing that floor, and then they added a 3rd floor. But when they finally came to the decision to build the 40-bed extension, back in June 23, we had the initial budget of $27,872,291. The current ask is an increase of only about 6%. So I just wanted to keep that in perspective on this size of build and over that period of time, especially considering the rate of inflation in the construction industry has been running at 5.6%. So it's actually almost below the rate of inflation. And a lot of that's to do with HDR. In the meantime, we also added the sprinkler system, which actually added about $700,000 to the project. So there's also been cost savings along the lines that have helped, and negotiations that HDR have been able to do. So I just wanted to keep that in perspective. So this is actually the first time that we've come to the committee asking for increased funds since 23, and that's when we settled in on the build of a 40-bed extension. So.
Thanks, Councillor McAlpine. Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. So just for clarification, there was talk of potential, it's got to be reviewed, but talk of potential 600,000 in surplus from 2024 looking to be rolled into this project as well. The $1.6 million ask, is that in addition to that 600, or is that 600 going to come off of that? So now we're talking $1 million.
Hannah?
So I can speak to that for you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor. So it's a total number, 1,600,000 is a total million ask, respectively from county and the city towards this project. So it will be no addition, and I really hope this project gonna be finished soon. And this is the anticipated project of 29.9 million. So that price is not final. Like, I hope we're gonna be spending less than that, but this is the increase project to 29.9. That's what we're anticipating, because the project is still alive and still going. So right now, to be confident to finish this project, we're asking for 1,600,000 respectively from city and the county to be added to the prior approved budget.
Okay, I appreciate that, but that's not answering my question. You talked about the 600,000 in surplus. Is that 600,000 going to come off of that 1.6 million, correct, or is it in addition to the 1.6?
It's going to come off.
Okay, so
it's going to come off.
So if in fact that pans out as we think, the ask is for $1 million.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just in terms of the motion that we have moved and seconded right now, it states that we're receiving this information. Are we receiving this information or approving $1.6 million increase?
I see it in front of me as receiving it as information.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? No? Okay, if there's no other questions, I'm going to call for the vote. Oh. Just a minute here.
Opening the vote.
Oh, there we go.
Closing the vote. And it carries.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for stepping up and getting us out of a kind of a tricky situation at the John Noble home. We had a rough couple of months, so thank you for doing what you did for us.
Most welcome. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. I don't know. Okay. Which takes us to 5.3, Courtney Boyd and David Clement. And I'd like to ask for a motion for a mover and a seconder, please. I have a mover and I have a seconder. Is someone here to speak? Madam Clerk, did you read? There's no one here?
I guess not.
All right. Then I guess we'll just call for a vote to receive it. No vote necessary? There's no one here. Councillor Coleman? Yes. Well, this is a strange meeting, Councillor Coleman. You're seeing delegations now. That's great. All right, so we don't need a vote. We'll just door just opened. Maybe they're coming in. No, okay. All right. I think what we'll do then is move right along to 5.4, which is Nathan Etherington. If you can come forward, please, and give us your name and address for the clerk. And I need a motion, mover and a seconder. I have them. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, Nathan.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Nathan, but just a point about here. If that, what he's speaking to here has been deferred, do we still need this?
Yeah.
Or?
In the city of Brantford says that if you're not on the agenda, you can't speak. But I asked Mr. Etherington if he still wanted to speak, and he does. And we don't have that same bylaw that the city does. So he has 10 minutes. He could read a book, he could tell a poem, he could do anything he likes for 10 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to council. I'm speaking about more than just that motion tonight. I did watch last month's council meeting regarding the motion to reconsider, and I was disappointed in the way that things unfolded. When I attended my first meeting, before I attended my first public meeting, I went out and I bought this Robert's Rules of Order book so that I knew how to behave and act in a public meeting. And the book starts off with, how many times have you been to a meeting that didn't go well? Was there a feeling that something got railroaded? Did it take an interminable amount of time to sample the simplest things? And it suggests that if that is happening in your meeting, that the rules are not being enforced. When the motion to reconsider was put forward, the procedural bylaw is quite clear. Section 43A states that it is not debatable. And as a result of that, things went off the rails a little bit. So I'm asking you to consider to direct staff to amend the procedural bylaw to add clearer information in about reconsideration motions, that it be stated in a clear manner. So something to the effect of, I move to reconsider the decision of council or committee on a date regarding report number, whatever the report number would be, or a motion. And then after having a seconder, the vote would be called. That should be something that should take about a minute. And in last month's meeting, it took considerably longer than a minute. And I noticed that motions to reconsider have been relatively rare here, but they have been coming up more frequently. And so I think some clarity would to the procedural bylaw would help move those things along. There could be another clause stating that if a member deviates from the above clause, they can be given a warning by the chair. And if the member continues to deviate from the clause, then the chair shall rule them out of order. And the reconsideration clause should be put on the following agenda for consideration. Since that meeting, I also attended another meeting in which people seem to have an issue with the Heritage Committee making recommendations to council. This is actually part of the Ontario Heritage Act to have a committee to advise council on matters related to the Ontario Heritage Act. The Act states itself, Section 28.1, the Council of a Municipality shall may establish a bylaw for a municipal heritage committee to advise council and assist council on matters relating to this part and part 5 of the Act. This is further included in the Ontario Heritage Toolkit, a tool for heritage committees that their responsibility is to advise and recommend things to council. And further, after that meeting, I asked the clerks to forward me the bylaw for the committee, and the bylaw also includes those words, make recommendations to council. So council has directed a committee to sit, and that committee's purpose is to make recommendations to council. The last thing that I would like to speak to is about the motion that was deferred this evening. So I just asked you to take this into consideration for if that motion does come back before you. I would describe the past of the Government Relations Committee in the past as a kind of hokey-pokey approach that was not effective in getting what we needed as a municipality out of the government. The committee was proposed to be more than 2 members and the mayor, but no one else wanted to be on the committee. The CAO also announced that council had an opportunity to give feedback earlier, and no feedback was received. I had a conversation with Councillor Kyle and suggested that rather than being a list, perhaps it should be a spreadsheet, and council can do a survey to identify priorities and councillors who should be participating in delegations. After each conference, that spreadsheet can then be updated for the next conference to take topics off that have been accomplished and prioritize new topics for the following conference. There is a clause in the motion that states has resulted in de facto delegation of authority. I remember another motion in which it said members of the public were vitriolic, and that motion was defeated for its language, and I would say that this one should similarly be defeated because of that clause. I watched the meeting of February 10th, and I came up with vastly different interpretations of the meeting. I see no purpose in eight members of council going to the Good Roads Conference. Are you going because you have an infrastructure project that you want help and assistance in moving the county forward? Or are you going just to meet up with friends? I have seen pictures in the past online with tables loaded of oysters and alcohol. I too advocated for the Brantford Heritage Committee to have a budget for people to go to the Ontario Heritage Conference, and upon their return, they give an update on their takeaways. So I think this is similarly what the Government Relations Committee was proposing, was that if you go to a committee, you should have a brief report back about your takeaways from the conference. I give an example. I'm on the library board, and I'm also on the Ontario Library Board Association. And I've been a planner for the Super Conference for the past 3 years. And in recognition of this time and effort that it takes to plan this, it costs the taxpayer $0. I bring back my learnings to the library board, like the Valuing Ontario Libraries Toolkit, which assigns an economic value to the library's work and was developed by the province's Ontario Library Service. Each chair is assigned a value of $2, which was used as the average price of coffee for a 15-minute stay. I also attended a half-day session on cybersecurity and shared that knowledge with the county last week to ensure that we were ready if a cybersecurity incident occurred. I believe this is the type of reporting that the Government Relations Committee was discussing. I was also told that meetings have occurred with MPs and MPPs, but these are confidential meetings and you can't report publicly about what happens in a confidential meeting. When we started doing something a different way with this Government Relations Committee, when you're doing something for the first time, it doesn't always work properly as maybe everyone intended it to. But that doesn't mean that we should throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think there are ways that we can improve things so that we don't go back to not having an active Government Relations Committee to get what the municipality needs out of our provincial and federal stakeholders. So those are my comments to council, and I appreciate you and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nathan, and thank you for being within your 10 minutes. You did very well. Are there questions from council to Nathan about any of the 3 or 4 topics he talked about? No? Yeah, I think there's some things that may have appeared to you differently than the way they really were. There's when we go to these conferences, we have different suppliers and we have different people that have hospitality suites, and they supply things like food, and they buy you a drink, and there's lots of things that they give you as you gather in one of their hospitality suites. So sometimes pictures that you see are not as you see them. Sometimes they are. There's also a division of food and alcohol. Our former CEO, Michael Bradley, he actually paid back one of our councillors didn't like that idea of councillors drinking when they went to conferences. So Michael, because he was a party to it, he was at the table where people were drinking, actually out of his own pocket paid for those drinks because he felt like he was supposed to have been some sort of a guide for us to tell us we shouldn't have had a beer or a glass of wine. Not being a drinker, it didn't matter to me. A lot of us are not drinkers, so sometimes things are exaggerated when you see them online. You don't know whose glass belongs to who, so it's kind of difficult to start to throw stones at anyone. And as far as bylaws and things like that, I think because these meetings are clerked and because our staff is here, everything you've said tonight can be taken under consideration. I think it's great that you get so involved in council and community. So I guess, we thank you for your interest in all of the things that you mentioned. And if there's no other questions, I'm going to call for a vote to receive as information. Oh, wait a minute. Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just one quick question for the Clerk's Department. I believe at some point we're going to be reviewing our procedural bylaw coming up relatively soon.
Through your worship, to Councillor Oakley's question, yes, you'll have an opportunity. I think the best time would be to review the procedural bylaw when I come to the policy meeting with an update or a recommended procedure for the vote manager portion of this. I think that would be a really good opportunity to review other things as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for Nathan? See none, let's just call the vote to receive, please, as information.
Opening the vote.
Thank you.
Closing the vote. And it carries.
Thank you. Next is 5.5, which is Ed from the jewelry store. Come on up, Ed. And if I could get a mover and a seconder, please. I have those. So Ed, if you could just state your name, please, and your address for council, for the clerk, and then go ahead. You've got 10 minutes.
My name is Ed McGuire. I reside at 424 King Edward Street. Here in Paris. And I've owned and operated Paris Jewelers for the last 30 years. I'm very proud to have my daughter with me tonight. She just joined the business about 3 years ago. So she's kind of my support here. I've had the opportunity to apply for grants made available by the county and basically the process that I've gone through has been nothing but a sincere pleasure. And that starts with Brandon Webb, Research and Marketing Economic Development Officer. I didn't know Brandon before I started this procedure, but I was lucky enough to meet with him over at Wincy Mills, and right from the get-go, he's been nothing but supportive, receptive, and I just feel so very fortunate to have him do for us what he has done. Right from the initial application, I filled the application out offline. Brandon met with me. We had a coffee, discussed the Leafs beating the Rangers, and then he reviewed my application and he thought it was done well enough to turn in. So at that point, I met the deadline. I turned it in. It went to the Administration and Operations Committee, and I found out through Brandon that it was approved. And I can't tell council how much this means to a downtown retailer to have all your support. It just makes you feel like even though we're going to go through what we're going through with the main street, it makes you feel that the county's on your side and they genuinely do care. And that's why I'm up here. I just want to thank Brant County Council for everything they've done for us. And I don't even know at this point whether it's been passed and approved, but even if it wasn't, I'd still stand up here and say thank you all for everything you've done for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Councillor Pierce, you have?
I do. Just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor, and Ed, thank you very much for those comments. It's nice to hear the positive about the staff. We know as a council that our staff is A1, but it's very nice to hear that from the public. And I guess the icing on the cake of that was, I think part of the conversation was the Leafs beating the Rangers. So that's always a good conversation there. And I'll just leave that at that, Eddie.
Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments, Fred? Again, it is very nice to hear that we're doing something right. You know, these are very trying days for us. You know that, not just for us, but for the whole world. And every day is someone being down on something or being negative about something. And we know how hard our staff works, and we're very proud of them. And so thank you for saying that, Ed, because I know you don't have to, and I know that you wanted to. And you're going to be very proud of your main street when it's finished. We put a lot of thought into it. And although the big dig sounds very aggressive, this time next year, when we light the Christmas tree at Christmas next year, you're going to be very proud to be one of the store owners on the main street. It's going to be magnificent. And so thank you. Thank you for saying that, because we know that you didn't have to. Any other comments for Ed? Say none. I'm going to call the vote to receive his information. Look how good I'm getting at this.
Opening the vote.
Yikes. I'm feeling accomplished.
Closing the vote.
Look at that.
The motion carries.
Thank you. Takes us to number 6 on the agenda, which is the adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting, council minutes of February the 25th. And I need a mover and a seconder to receive the minutes. And I have those. Are there any questions to the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the vote to receive.
Opening the vote. Just waiting for Councillor Chambers. Closing the vote. And the motion carries.
I don't think I like the shaming part of this. We shouldn't be shaming people. Takes us to number 6.2 on the agenda, which is another set of minutes from March the 4th, and I need a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor. And I have them. Are there any questions for the minutes of March the 4th, 2025? Seeing none, we'll call the vote to receive.
Opening the vote. Closing the vote.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Takes us to number 7 on the agenda, which is business arising from the minutes. Are there any minutes or any issues? Councillor Miller?
Yeah, one question, and that's related. It's a budget-related question. I've donated to the Brant Community Healthcare System in the past, and when you do that, you get a tax receipt. And the question, asking for a friend, to everybody is, we got that 1% surcharge. Are we getting the tax receipt?
Who would know that? Heather Boyd? Oh, Heather Mifflin. We do have our share of Heathers.
Through you, your worship, it is not considered a donation, so it would not be receivable. You're not giving it personally, it's being as a charge as part of the raise through the municipality.
Councillor Miller?
I gotta ask, you're sure about that? 100% sure?
I can check with our auditors.
Okay. If you don't mind, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, seeing none, we'll move on to number 8 on the agenda, which is consent items. 8.1, we have no consent items to be approved, which takes us to 8.2, which are consent items to be received, noting that we have, I think, 18 of them. 18 of them. Looking for a mover and a seconder to get them on the floor, please. I have them. Do we want anything separated, or we're going to move them all as one? All right, call for the vote to receive them all at once, please.
Opening the vote.
Thank you.
Closing the vote. And that carries.
Which takes us to number 9. I've got to find it here. There you go. Committee. Pardon me? Nobody pulled it. No. Takes us to number 9 on the agenda, which is committee reports. Can I get a mover and a seconder to get down the floor, please? It's the Administration and Operations Committee report of March the 18th. And we have it on the floor and it's being seconded. Are there any questions? I'm sorry, Lucas.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item 10 out.
Of the committee report?
Yep, to be considered separately, please. And then I'd like to make an amendment when possible.
Number 10. Okay, we're going to separate number 10. Councillor Miller?
Item 15, and same as Councillor Oakley. I'd like to make an amendment.
That's the Easy Ride Taxi, right? Okay, so we're going to pull number 10 and number 15. Anybody else want anything else? Ask the clerk to call the vote on everything but 10 and 15.
1 second while I pull it out.
Uh-oh. My computer died. There we go.
Madam Clerk, I vote in the affirmative.
Yeah,
This
Madam
kicked
Clerk.
me out for some reason.
I'm coming.
for a seconder for the separated items.
Yeah.
Opening the vote.
Hmm?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Sorry, just to clarify for the clerk, the motion that came up was on the library separated. There's still I have to make an amendment to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the vote was for everything but 10 and 15.
My apologies. I'm just going to pull up the vote.
I gotta get back there.
Opening the vote. Closing the vote. And that carries.
Thank you. So we'll speak to number 10 first, which is the library. Lucas, Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we amend to strike the first whereas clause as it's redundant to the Library Act. So it doesn't need to be stated, and or depending on our interpretation, is it asking for additional privileges that I don't think this is the venue to clarify.
I'll just review that. Yep. That's it, Councillor Oakley? I need a seconder. Councillor Howes, you're shaking your head. Oh, question. Okay, I still need a seconder though, Councillor Howes. Push your button. Oh, it's in there already. Sorry. Okay, Councillor Howes.
Thanks, and I just respectfully, I'm inquiring. We see a lot of documents and motions with whereases that kind of state things that are established, and I'm in the line in question is related. It states that the library is responsible for the operations and planning for future library venues. I'm not quite sure the necessity of this particular amendment, respectfully.
Okay, does staff want to comment on that, Allison? No, you're okay? Councillor Chambers?
I got to admit, I'm a little bit lost on what we're speaking to, but I'm speaking to the amendment. Is that what we're doing with the first clause?
Yes.
The amendment is to have it removed. I don't support that because for this reason, a lot of people do not understand how the library board works. And if you read something, then it helps to understand the Library Act. A lot of people don't know that the library is governed by the Library Act even. So this is an assisting to understand the motion. So I think it should stay in just to help the people that may not know that the library board has the full and sole responsibility to operate the library system. So let's leave it in to let the people know. A lot of people think it's a committee of council, which it is not. It's a board in and of itself governed by the Library Act.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Oakley, you want to speak to it again?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify why I'm looking to strike this particular clause. Last week when we had our discussion on this, there was some disagreement from the county side versus the library board side on what exactly is stipulated in the Library Act and interpretation of as it relates to specifically planning, not the operation side, but specifically planning, and thus I wanted to remove this clause as I think it implies one interpretation versus the other. And I didn't think this would be an appropriate venue to have that approved by council. I think that would have to be a larger discussion at some point.
Any other comments before we call the vote? None? Madam Clerk, could you call the vote, please?
To clarify, this is to strike out the first clause, so opening the vote.
Yes. Councillor Chambers?
Point of order. I'm not seeing the amendment. I'm seeing the voting on the motion as if it was amended.
Madam Clerk, did you change it to make it look like it was?
if I understand the motion, that it's to remove the first whereas clause.
Right.
Opening the vote.
No.
Closing the vote. And that is defeated.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about number 15, Councillor Miller. Oh, we got to go back and vote on it the way it was when we started. Call the vote on the way it stood as number 10.
Seeking a mover and a seconder first.
Seconder, mover, and a seconder first, please.
No, that's interesting.
Okay, opening the vote.
Okay.
Wait a minute. I have to go here.
First clause of item 10 be stuck.
Okay. Madam Clerk, my computer just crashed and I'm going back in, so I'll have to vote. You'll have to vote for me until I get.
Don't make it confusing, Councillor Chambers, by putting your hand up.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers, and we're just waiting for Councillor McAlpine to.
Oh, this is a rough
Closing
one,
the
guys.
vote.
This is a rough one.
And the motion carries.
There we go. Okay, now we're going down to number 15, Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is on page 195 of our package, if anybody's following along. And that's the communication easy ride taxi be referred to staff for report to County of Brant Council. So I'm going to bring, I'd like to make an amendment to that, and it's very similar to, we have somebody violating, say, a bylaw on a planning matter, and bylaw will hold off any investigation, any work on that until the planning matter has been dealt with. So I'm going to make a similar motion or similar amendment to that. And if you've read the addendum for tonight, you'll see that there is a communications item from Grand River Cab regarding a 10-year-old or approaching 10-year-old vehicle that they have, that they said it's in good condition. They've done the maintenance and all the work, and it's been inspected by the county. And I believe Easy Ride Taxi is in a similar boat. I don't know if theirs is going to expire in the next month or so. But what the amendment is, and I'll read it, Mr. Mayor, if I get the seconder, that's great. That taxis currently in use that exceed the 10-year limit between now and when the staff report is approved at council be allowed to stay in use as a taxi so long as all other conditions and regulations are met. So I'm looking for a seconder on that.
I gotta have a seconder, please. Gotta push the button. No button?
And I can read it for the clerk if she needs that again.
Should like that, yeah.
That taxis currently in use that exceed the 10-year limit between now and when the staff report is approved at council be allowed to stay in use as a taxi so long as all other conditions and regulations are met.
Everyone's clear?
And I believe we're going to see that report next month.
Councillor Garneau?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can ask a question through you, I'm not sure if there's anyone from staff tonight who can speak to this. I am working on the assumption that the age limit on the vehicles relates to safety considerations. This isn't a bylaw I'm familiar with. Do we have a requirement for an annual inspection by a licensed mechanic already on vehicles for hire, the commercial vehicle yellow sticker? Or is that not a requirement for taxis?
Who would know that? Cindy?
Through the mayor to Councillor Garneau. I know there are a number of requirements within the bylaw that taxi companies need to adhere to. The specifics around that, unfortunately, I don't know offhand. Would need to provide that in a follow-up to council. I can note that the requirement, though, was related to safety, and it was added to our bylaws back in May of 2022. And there was a 2-year grace period built into that at the time.
Okay. Councillor Garneau?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is going to come as somebody who's driving a 16-year-old vehicle. I'm apprehensive because of our accountabilities for public safety. I truly appreciate where Councillor Miller is at here, because this does have costs for the businesses. Where I'm concerned that in the event of an unfortunate incident involving one of these vehicles, our decision to extend that lifespan in this capacity could put the municipality at risk. I'm not sure if staff can speak to that or if others have thoughts, but I just want to pause there for a moment.
Cindy?
Through the mayor to council, certainly I think that the rationale for putting that in place was to mitigate risk. And in looking at all the reasons around that, safety for vehicles that are 10 years and newer, technology and safety requirements have significantly changed in the last 10 years. So it certainly is a decision that has risk built into it, and why that, part of the rationale that was brought forward to council in May of 2022, why that bylaw was changed at the time.
Councillor Garneau, you're okay with that? Yeah, Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you and to Councillor Garneau. I could not agree more, and that's exactly where I was going to go, and I was going to take it a step further. Is there any liability? If potentially we have it in a bylaw that a vehicle can't be any more than 10 years old to be used for that, and we're allowing it to be used, knowing full well that's in our bylaw, could that come back? Potentially there's no issue with the vehicle, but I'm just simply saying if we've got it in there for the reasons we do, specifying 10 years, and we allow it to continue to operate, and heaven forbid something happens, are we liable because we said you can't do it and we allowed it to happen? So I can't support this.
Councillor House?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. And I have similar concerns. A 10-year-old or a 16-year-old personal vehicle, well kept, can become a vintage automobile that's enjoyed, but a taxi gets a lot of wear and tear. I guess my question for Cindy is, so this seems like it is talking specifically about an age limit of 10 years. Is there a kilometer range too? Like I'm just wondering of the qualifiers that are involved, but I do hesitate on us having, I want our taxi companies to be able to survive and be able to serve this community, but at the same time we want people to be in vehicles that are in good shape.
Cindy?
Through the mayor to council, I'm not aware that there's any kilometers attached. It is based on the years.
Just the years.
The bylaw. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Miller?
Yeah, just a lot of what we're discussing I think will be in the staff report. So if I don't have a seconder, I don't really want to speak to it unless we get a seconder.
I thought we had a seconder. We don't have a seconder? We just a minute. Just a minute here. Just a minute here. Yeah, we have a seconder, Councillor House.
Oakley.
Oh, mine says House.
Can I just go down here?
Now it says Miller and Oakley. Thank you. Okay, we can call the vote first, please. Oh, who wants to talk? Councillor Miller?
Just, I don't know all the ins and outs. I'm not asking that this go on. I was just asked, I think the request was for a month, so, that's what the amendment is for. The county does do inspections on these, so, and that's why I put in the clause that all other conditions and regulations are met. But, I mean, if you don't think it's gonna be safe and we're putting people at risk, then vote accordingly, but I'm just trying to help these guys out a little.
Any other questions? Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment, and I appreciate where Councillor Miller's coming from here. But as was stated, it's only going to be a month or so before we get the report. So maybe that would be the better time to understand what's going to come out of the report and how we go forward. I just, as I say, everything could be no issues at all, but I can't take that chance.
Okay, any other questions? Call the vote.
Opening the vote. Closing the vote. And that's defeated.
And we'll go back to the original way that number 15 is written. Call the vote. I need a mover and seconder. I've got. Oh, okay. Okay. Call the vote, please.
Opening the vote. Closing the vote. And that carries.
Thank you. That takes us to number 10, staff reports. Is that right? 10.1, Paris Business Improvement. Who's going to speak to that? Nobody? Okay. Mover and seconder, please put it on the floor. Thank you. Any questions to 10.1? Staff is here to answer any questions. Seeing none, call the vote.
Opening the vote.
Councillor Vels left. Push a button there. We can just wait for a minute. I didn't see him leaving or I wouldn't have called the vote. Councillor House.
Through the chair, just while we have a minute, and just as a, not really a point of order, but just a comment on this process with our screens. I'm just wondering if when the horseshoe image comes up on the screen, if it can be left up a little bit longer for the audience to see kind of who's voting which way, because I think if it's up there briefly, nobody's going to be able to kind of actually determine who voted where. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor House.
Closing the vote. And that carries.
There we go. 10.2, appointment of engineers for the new drain. A mover and a seconder to get it on the floor. Mr. Walton's here for any questions. Are there any questions? No? Councillor Kyle?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Rob. Rob, is this the one that we did have the delegation that was supposed to speak earlier?
The delegation that wasn't here, yes.
Yeah. Is there anything you can comment on that process?
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor Kyle. So this report was at committee on last Tuesday, and the downstream owner, Mr. Clement, was a delegation asked the council not to approve the petition. And one of the things that he brought up at the meeting was that there was a meeting the next day scheduled between Mr. Clement and our lawyer Cheryl Glassford and myself, and that meeting did take place. Just to say, there was no intention of that meeting not being before the other, just the way schedules worked out as to how that happened. And on this project, I'll guarantee you there's been more conversation before this petition than any other project I've ever worked on, I think, because of the importance of the development that's here and the interaction with a few of the owners here as to what may or may not happen. So the meeting did take place. I wouldn't say that we came out of it agreeing on any go forward position. Because it's still the position of staff that this is an important project that should go forward under the Drainage Act, and the council should appoint an engineer and follow the process to do the decisions. In all the years back to when I was in consulting and writing reports and actually now signing petitions on behalf of a few petitions on behalf of municipalities for them, this is actually the first time I've actually had somebody come forward and say, don't actually accept a petition. And one thing that was brought forward is that whether or not the petition is valid to proceed upon. That's not really the decision council's making. It's whether they're going to accept the petition and proceed under the procedure for the engineer to decide whether it's valid. So one thing I'll look back on in my time here at Grant, you've seen a few of these petitions. And I think one thing it goes back to is that there hasn't been in the past a lot of master drainage planning done on projects. There's been a lot of water and sewer planning, a lot of sanitary sewer planning, but not a lot of master drainage planning done on projects. And so, we've reacted in different ways on different projects, and a few of them we've used the Drainage Act. But in this area, I think the good thing that's happened is, the lands at the south is only just in the last 6 months came into the official plan even. So, before that, they couldn't even be developed. Sifton lands have been in there for some period of time, but we have talked to a lot of the development properties and the gravel pit property in this area and talked about what needs to happen so we have a drainage outlet. And that's what came to the time of myself on behalf of the county signing the petition on behalf of the roads, and then the two main developers in this area signing the petition, because in the next 2 to 5 years there's going to be some substantial work done here. We want to make sure that everything's in place so nobody is in a bad position in the future. And there's a procedure under the Drainage Act to do that. And anybody in the Drainage Act also has their right of appeals when they don't feel that they've been treated properly under any of the procedures, either through how it's to be built, how they're assessed, or whether the process was properly followed. So I would encourage council to proceed with the project and follow the procedure like we have on many other projects in the recent past. Glad to answer any other questions.
Any other questions for Rob? Seeing none, thank you. What's in front of us is to approve the appointment of RJ Burnside and Associates on the Cleaver Road drain. Call the vote, please.
Opening the vote. Closing the vote. And that carries.
10.3, which is the North Paris Fire Station. And Darren's here, Cindy's here. Doesn't get any better than that. Do I need a motion, seconder? Get down the floor, please. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions to Cindy or Darren regarding what's in front of us? Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have some concerns on this project.
Okay.
I've spoken to staff about it today. I'm not going to support the additional ask, $215,000, and I'm really questioning the footprint of this building. I cannot believe that this is going to be a 6-bay station. I thought it was going to be most likely a 3-bay station like we have built in the last few years. And it seems to me it's, since we already have one main station over here somewhere, I cannot believe that this is going to be a 6-bay station, and I cannot support this.
Darren or Cindy?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Coleman. You're correct. Our original plan was to go with 3 bays. And what we wanted to, for future planning and for in the event of having to restage the aerial device, we wanted it to be deep enough that the aerial would fit either in the north end of town or the south end of town. Just with the river, if for some reason we had to stage it up there, so we added depth to house the aerial. Then we took a look at our current situation with apparatus. So current station 1 has 5 apparatus in there. So it's using 5 of the bays there. We have a UTV, which is a Polaris Ranger, and a Zodiac boat in the 6th bay. They're staggered in there so we can try to get them both out. And then we have a support unit in the rear building. So my thought process with having 6 bays is to try to redistribute and balance the workload between the 2 stations, and with consultation with station personnel, potentially have the aerial and one other specialized rescue, may it be the Zodiac or the UTV in station 1, and then the support unit and possibly the boat or UTV up at the north end, just for balance of workload and life. We also, through grant funding, are in the process of obtaining a decon trailer that we're going to have to find a spot for, and we'd like it to be housed inside versus outside. So we'd be utilizing bays for that as well. It's just for future growth and current and future apparatus.
Okay. Any other questions for Darren? Councillor Miller?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through to Darren, I probably should have asked this a while ago because I think it's been in there for a while, but why is there a library kiosk in this?
I'm going to defer that to Cindy.
Like, I understand there's one on Dago, which makes sense because there's no library up there, but we got a library in Paris, so maybe help me out with that one.
Through the mayor to council, that was a request made through library, through the CEO, to consider that as part of the build. We incorporated the library kiosk at the Onondaga station in the vestibule there. So, as you can see in the report, the original design did incorporate that without, too much trouble. An alternative design being option 3, which, we have a reduced space. We may have to cut that out if council were to decide to go in that direction. But that was a request made by the library.
Okay, even though we have a library in Paris, they want a kiosk there. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, call the vote.
Opening the vote.
It's not taking my vote. Wait a minute. Just doing it here. Get it in there. It won't take my vote because I'm not in the right place here.
I can do it for you.
It's all right, just doing it. Here we go. Now I'll give me my vote back.
I don't think it won't. How do you want to vote?
For it, yes.
Closing the vote. And that carries.
Thank you. Number 10.4, which is the request for the additional funding for the John Noble Home. I need a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor. This is part of the presentation from earlier. I have my first, yeah. Are there any other questions, Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So again, this is a request for 1.6 million additional funds. I asked the question and received an answer that if in fact the surplus is the 600,000 like they suggest it would be, then the ask is only for $1 million. So I'm going to ask if we could defer this until we get the answer of exactly what the surplus is, because if we're approving 1.6 and then there's another 600K surplus, now we're up to 2.2. So, and again, when I asked the question specifically, I was advised that the ask would only be for $1 million if that $600,000 was confirmed as surplus.
Councillor McAlpine.
If I could speak to that. At this point, the way the agreement happens between the city and the county, we can't make decisions on ordering the FF&E until we have that 1.6 million approved, even though we won't be accessing that money most likely till late fall, December, or even into the next year. But we can't make those decisions until we have that, and we can't confirm the amount of the projected surplus until the auditors have finished their report, which will be happening shortly. But there's a time frame that overlaps, so that's why we need to do that at this point. And the 600,000 will be applied to the ask once everything's sort of sorted out that way. That's why it needs to happen in this order.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. I believe in the report, the original report, it said between April 1st and May 1st for the ordering. I believe that's what it said anyway. I may have misread that. So the way I look at it is this is an ask for $1.6 million, which is not necessary if that $600,000 surplus is there. I understand the fact that the auditors have to do that. I can only assume that the city of Brantford is I'm hoping that they're asking the same question there if the same comment was made that there's a $600,000 surplus. So again, if it's April 1st to May 1st in order to order the FFE, then I would suggest that I'm sure there's enough I don't want to say talent because that's not that I don't want it to sound negative, but I'm sure there's enough staff that can understand if in fact the $600,000 is going to be surplus. They didn't just pull that number out of a hat. So we need confirmation on that. I can't put 1.6 in there knowing the fact that if there's 600 surplus, that's going to go in as well. Can't do that.
Thanks, Councillor Pierce. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think just to clarify what Councillor McAlpine said and to help Councillor Pierce, we have to be able to show that we have funded this project to the 29.3 million. Now, whether we take 1.6 million extra funding from the city and the county or we take 1 million, it doesn't really make much difference. But we will hinder the progression of the project if we don't actually have money enough to allow us to make the commitments for the extra purchases that we need today. We may not draw on that 1.6 million, we may end up only drawing at 1.0.
Councillor Pierce and then Councillor Garneau.
So that being said, then I would like, my preference is to defer if I can get a seconder on that. But I appreciate the fact there's timelines on this. If the deferral is not possible, then I would like to amend the motion to state the fact that if in fact the surplus comes in at $600,000, that $600,000 goes back to being split between the city and the county. One way or another, I'm not in favor of putting the 1.6 unless there's some sort of guarantee in there that if in fact that 600,000 is surplus, it comes back. If it only turns out to be 300, then 1.3. I want the total to be 1.6, and I can't support anything more than that.
Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Pierce has moved something. I'm looking for a second.
He is.
For my move is
for the
deferral.
I think we have to deal with that before I make my own comments. on
Okay, is there a seconder for Councillor Pierce? No. Oh, look down, David. There is a seconder. Okay, so we'll have to vote on that first. Do you want to still comment, Councillor Garneau, before we? No. Councillor Miller and then Councillor McAlpine.
There's some issues with, is it on the floor? Yeah. Okay, so is it possible to read that? Is it up there somewhere? Because, I don't see it. No, your motion to, what is the amendment? Is it that the money be returned, or is it the deferral?
Yeah, the deferral motion's on the table.
Oh, okay. Because yeah, there were some issues with the way you had worded about it being returned, because technically not all the money is ours. You got to keep in mind a lot of it comes from the province. But I won't speak to it unless it's on the floor.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, sir. Just to Councillor Miller's comments about who owns that 600,000 if it's there. I did ask the question in John Noble Home Committee of Management meeting. I was told that it is back to the city and back to the county.
Councillor McAlpine.
And just to clarify, because the home is owned by the city and the county, then the money that's surplus would automatically come back to the county and the city. The 70-30 split roughly. So you don't need a motion in regards to that. But.
Okay, there's a motion to defer on the table. It has a seconder in Councillor Chambers. This is to defer. Call the vote.
Opening the vote. Closing the vote. And that is defeated.
Councillor Pierce.
So, okay, with that being said, I would like to amend the motion so that if in fact the $600,000 surplus comes to fruition, that $600,000 is put back to the city and the county, and the whatever the split is, the 70-30, 72-28, whatever it is, to have the total of 1.6 million. That's it.
Seeking a seconder. Councillor Chambers.
I think the amendment has to be a little bit further crafted, because the way it stands now, if the surplus is 500,000, I think the impetus is that it be applied to the cost. So if the amendment is, or maybe it's a separate resolution, that any surplus be applied to the 1.6 million, then that makes sense.
Okay.
But in this case, it doesn't really make sense.
Councillor Howes and then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for staff, and I understand the intent behind this amendment, but my question is, anything regarding the surplus, isn't that already baked into this? Like wouldn't the surplus automatically
earlier for it to be put into this?
So if staff could just clarify that for everyone, please.
Through you, the worship. The annual surplus comes back. So they're talking about the 2024 annual surplus. So it normally just is divided and comes back to the city county on the cost sharing basis. So normally we have a policy actually in place that says if it's within 5% of the budget, it just goes to the John Noble Home Capital Reserve. And anything over that 5% goes to the county general surplus. So this would specifically allocate it to this project.
Councillor House?
Follow up then through the chair. So the surplus wouldn't automatically come back. We're kind of talking piggy banks here, right? Wouldn't the surplus automatically reduce what the county is submitting?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Okay, Councillor Bell and then Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. I'm not quite sure why Councillor Pearce should want to have this amendment, because I think the main motion actually says that the county share be applied to the project. I'm not quite sure what Councillor Pearce's motion will do that is not already said in that main motion.
Okay, let's let Councillor Pearce speak next, then before Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you, the motion is that an additional funding of $1.6 million, with the county share being $448,000, be approved to the funding debt to be repaid from the development charges tax levy. Okay, so what that's saying is they're looking for an extra $1.6 million to be split between the county and the city, which is fine. Okay, but then there was a talk earlier of a $600,000 potential surplus that they want to put towards the project as well, the additional. So what I'm saying is that's why the question was asked. Yes, they feel that that's the total it is going to cost. So if we're asking for $1.6 million, I don't have a problem with that. Whatever surplus is there, I want whatever is extra of the $1.6 million to be returned back to the city and the county. That's all I'm asking. So they're asking for 1.6. Our share is $448,000, $444,800. I'm fine with that. But the extra surplus, whatever it's going to be, I don't want that added on there as well. I want the total to be 1.6 million, which is what their ask was. Whatever extra comes back. That's why I want to defer this until we understand what the surplus is. If it's 600,000 like they say, then we give the extra million between the city and the county. If it's 300,000, then we give the extra 1.3 between the city and the county. That's where I'm going.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to council. I think this is one of those resolutions where if I go back to what's at the John Noble home, we might have not been having this conversation if it had been crafted a little differently. I think the intent of what Councillor Pearce is speaking to is reflected here, but we could have saved ourselves a lot of anguish if in our own resolution it had read that the county share being up to that 44800 number. And so for me, I am not going to support the amendment because I believe the essence of what we're trying to accomplish is already in the main motion. And I think further to that, we've had comments this evening from both staff at the John Noble home and our own finance staff that this is where we are headed. And if I understand the comments from my colleagues who sit on the John Noble home board correctly, this is one of those procedural type things that we need to do in order to advance what may also be either a purchasing or a grant opportunity or something that at face value does appear that we might be committing as much as that $444,000. But in practice, it appears that we will have a proportional share coming back to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers.
I think to capture what Councillor Pearce is saying, the correct amendment would be that the operating surplus be applied to offset the $444,800 county share. What Councillor Pearce is saying, and I agree with him, that this resolution says we're committing the 444 and we're committing the surplus. But what we want to do is commit the surplus to offset the 444. So that's the resolution that I think Councillor Pearce is trying to put forward.
Okay. Councillor McAlpine?
So the challenge we've got here is this is tonight going to the city and the county at the same time. And this proposal was put together by our finance staff here at the county and the city. And so I would prefer that we do not make an amendment to this and approve it as written so that we are in alignment with what's going on at the city at this time. So.
Okay. Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fully supportive of what Councillor McAlpine says there, and thanks to finance staff for writing it. I'm sure they've got the right words there. I think we have to distinguish between setting a funding level and how you actually provide the cash flow to it. And that's the difference here. So the cash flow may come from surplus. It may come from the other locations that are mentioned in this motion. But we do have to reset that funding level. We cannot go ahead with the project if we know we do not have enough funds already available for it. And I've pointed to it.
Thank you. Councillor Pierce?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Final comment I'll make here. I'm not opposed to what's going on here. And I understand we've got to come up with the extra $1.6 million. I get that. I support that. What I don't support is the way is exactly how this motion is written, is the fact that the first clause is that we are going to put $448,000 or $444,800 is the county share, and the second one, and the county share of the John Noble Home operating costs be put towards it as well. That's my problem with this. I got no problem supporting the project. I've got no problem supporting our share of the $1.6 million. I understand that, and that has to be done. I get that. The funding is there. What I don't support is putting our share of the $1.6 million, which is $444,800, and the additional our share of the surplus. That's my issue with this. That's why I want the total. And thank you to Councillor Chambers for telling me what I was thinking there, because that's where I was going on, is the fact that I just want our total to be that $444,800. That's our total of the $1.6 million. That's all I'm going there. That's it. I'm done.
Okay, it's still on the floor though to defer it and. Okay. Okay. And it's just its own. Yeah, we need a seconder. And come on, there we go. We have one. Are there any other questions, Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to staff along Councillor McAlpine's point, if this amendment were to pass and City of Brantford tonight passes it unamended, will we run into any potential issues there, or should we be fine in theory?
Allison.
To your worship, it's hard to say whether somebody questions it. I believe this is coming down to the interpretation as written, but this was done jointly, I believe. But Heather Mifflin might be able to speak more to that.
Thank you. Through your worship, the city's actual resolution is a little differently, because they are actually funding it fully from their reserve and then taking the surplus and putting it back in the reserve. Our reserve is not quite that healthy, and also we have development charges in play where they don't. So that's why this was written this way. I do see the confusion around the second clause, because it was meant to offset the debt. It was not meant to be in addition, over and above. So the amendment makes sense.
Councillor Pierce.
I said I wouldn't say anything else, but I'm going to, because Councillor Bell just pointed out to me that further on down in communications in the John Noble Home there, it does say that the City of Brantford and the County of Brant requested the approval to keep any surplus for the 2024 year to offset additional costs related to construction. So it's not in here, but it's in there. So I'm a happy guy if that's the way it is. So that's
great.
That's where I was going, and that's all.
It's nice to see council happy.
That was harder than the voting.
It was hard. Are there any other comments? Call the vote. Oh, you're taking.
I'll move to scrap, to
Scrap it.
remove it.
Okay, where's your
After all
second?
that.
Who is the secondary? Counselor?
Councilor
Kyle?
Crown?
Okay.
Sorry.
We're gonna go back to the original. We have a mover and a seconder. Counselor Pierce?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but this motion is not the same as what's in the John Noble home. So like, we've got to have one or the other. Or else we're going to go back through this all again.
We
Now that I've got my
won't
word.
be going through it again like that, no. Counselor Bell?
Yeah, I'm with my colleague here. If you look at item 11.1, the correspondence does have 3 lines in there, and I think if we use those 3 lines, which I'm sure the city will use because they've got the same 3 lines, that addresses the whole problem.
Heather Boyd?
So the recommendation from the John Noble Home was just to put the request forward to the city and the county. Then it's up to the city and county finance departments to recommend how we actually fund them. As Heather Mifflin mentioned, the city's funding theirs a little bit differently. I do agree. If we want to be 100% clear, in that second clause, we could say that the county share of the operating surplus be applied to reduce the additional funding request for the County of Brant portion. Just adding in the wording from the John Noble Home recommendation just gets the request onto the table. It didn't actually deal with the request.
Okay. It's on the floor, the original one.
No, Mr. Mayor, I think we need a friendly amendment here just to include the word offset.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, she's drafting it up now. It's changing 3 lines, you said? 3?
if you were to look at item 11.1 in our communications, there's a very nice clause there that could be taken by the clerk and used. So, if I may say, I think what we do with our share of the surplus is actually a county issue. It's not, the city might do something completely different with it. So I think in that respect, Councillor McAlpine, we can be different. Yeah.
Can I get a mover and seconder, please, for the new, and she'll read it out. That was there a minute ago. They need to see it though. Are you seeing the new one on your screens? Okay, so then any other? Yeah. If there's no more discussion, no more questions.
No. Redevelopment.
Yeah. I have a mover and a seconder.
That's different.
I need another mover and another seconder. I don't have it. I don't see it on mine, but that doesn't matter. Okay, yeah. Yeah, yes, please. You have it in front of you. She's going to read it out loud.
Sorry to clarify, because I don't think everybody has it on their screens, but this is to say that the second clause be amended to say that the county share of the 2024 John Noble Home operating surplus be applied to the county share of the additional funding request for the Belcourt redevelopment.
Everybody's...
The mover and seconder that I have currently are Councillor Pierce and Councillor Kyle.
Everyone's clear? Call the vote.
Opening the vote.
Oh my goodness.
Closing the vote. And that carries.
So we're on 10.4. Is that right? 10.4?
Can we vote on the original as amended?
Oh, we have to vote on the original as amended. Sorry. It's on the floor.
Opening the vote.
Opening. Oh, you're opening the vote already. Okay, open the vote. We're voting on the original as amended.
Closing the vote. And that carries.
Now we're going to 10.4. Is that right? Oh, that was 10.4. So you might. Okay, which takes us to number 11, which is communications. John Noble, Home Committee of Management resolutions. I need to put it on the floor in a seconder. Okay, any conversation, any comments? I don't want to talk about the John Noble Home anymore. Please call the vote.
Opening the vote.
Oh my God. Who didn't vote?
Closing the vote.
There we go.
And that carries.
Okay, which takes us to 11.2, which has got nothing to do with the John Noble Home. It's Paris Drinks Fest. Do you want to come up, or do you want to just come on up and see if there's any questions? You want to just give us your full name and your address, please, for the clerk?
My name is Tim Desley, full address. Hello? You think I know how to do this? My name is Tim Desley. My address is 287 Bay Street South, Hamilton, Ontario, LAP 3J5.
Perfect. I'm just going to get a mover and a seconder so we can let you speak. And I have them. Go ahead. You've got 10 minutes. Thanks, Tim.
Nowhere close to 10 minutes. Nothing about John Noble Home. This will be fast. Basically, we are once again asking for a letter of municipal significance so we can apply to the AGCO for our special occasions permits for Paris Drinks Fest.
Does anyone have any questions to Tim? Councillor Oakley and then Councillor Bell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to Tim on sort of a process, order of operations side of things. I'm just curious because, you know, Paris Drinks Fest is, I believe, already sold out early bird tickets and is selling tickets currently, and then you're applying for this, and then I assume at some point down the line applying for the noise exemption permit. So I'm just curious as to the reason for that order of operations rather than doing these things first and then coming and selling tickets once everything's approved.
Yeah, thank you for that. We do already have our approval for the noise exemption. That went through and was approved, I believe, on March 20th. So that's in place already. As far as timing for this, with the nature of events like this, in order to secure vendors, hopefully funding, sponsors, and definitely the artists that perform at the event, if we were to wait basically until this process to start booking those artists and booking tickets on sale, we just would not be able to have the time to do it properly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Bell and then Councillor Howes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Through you, Tim. Tim, I can't remember that noise exemption coming through, but maybe I'm getting old and forgetful. But the question is about noise. When we did last year, it was a successful event, but at the end of it, we did a survey of the surrounding population. I think, if I recall, 48% of the population that responded had concerns about noise. How are you going to address that?
What we're doing this year, we started it last year. Last year, you'll remember, we had to move the site because of flooding in Lions Park. So we did change rather quickly. This year, working with our production company, we are again coming up with an updated plan for the production. Smaller speakers that do not project quite as far, changing the direction of the staging to move away from residents. We did a campaign last year letting residents know that the event would be held at Salaps after it was changing from Lions Park. This year, obviously with more time on our side, we have more time to inform residents that might not be attending the event about the noise, about the timing, with the approved noise exemption, and working within the confines of what the exemption allows us to do.
Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Tim. Thanks for coming in about this. And just
and I was going to touch a little bit on what Councillor Bell has mentioned, but I do remember last year I was a little nervous going into the event and thinking that my phone and Councillor Oakley's phones would be ringing off the hook. That was not the case. Survey statistics aside, I heard more positivity from the community and the neighborhood than negativity. The fact that you're making adjustments, I think, is great. Would we want to have a concert or festival event happening on that property frequently? Probably not. But this year in particular, the fact that this event is downtown adjacent, I think is particularly beneficial during the big dig, and so happy to support it.
Councillor Oakley.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, just one more quick comment along the lines of Councillor House. I also expected a number of calls and did not, and the majority of complaints I did receive were related to an unrelated noise bylaw exemption issue with the Legion that has since then been sorted out. And then one additional comment that I heard from the downtown businesses, since that was mentioned, is I know there were vendors and the BIA was interested in potentially doing more with you guys in order to help sort of cross pollinate there. So just to put that on your radar.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Tim? Thank you. Thank you. If there's no other questions, we'll get the clerk to call the vote to receive. Councillor House?
Just, Mr. Mayor, I think Zach has gone up with some information that might be worthwhile for us.
I think he's just here to answer questions.
Yeah, to the chair, I just wanted to hover in case there's questions, but I can note within the noise exemption, there's a couple extra clauses that does give the authority to staff to turn down the music. So I think we're able to work with Tim and have a little more time this year around to have a successful event. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and it is a great event. It's no louder than the fair. Anyway, we won't talk about that. But anyway, we'll just call the vote. All those,
Opening the vote.
all those in favor of opening the vote?
Closing the vote. And that carries.
Thank you. 11.3, which is the vehicle age restriction. We've pretty much gone through that. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Put it on the floor. Comments, concerns, Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just based on the previous concerns in regards to this business, will we be able to communicate back to them just in regards to the conversation this evening that the report is coming within a month?
Through your worship, yes, we can do that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Clerk, if you could call the vote, please, to receive.
Opening the vote. Closing the vote. And that carries.
Takes us to number 12.1. Get a mover and a seconder, please, get on the floor. Oh, my computer went down again. Oh my God. Just push this one. There we go. Oh my God. And we are at 12.1. Proclamation request. We have a mover and we have a seconder. To light Penman's Dam. All those, call the vote.
Opening the vote.
Me?
Closing the vote. And that carries.
That's great. We're going to skip past 12.2. And we're going to go to number 13, which is other business. I didn't ask if there was any, I'm sorry? Everybody's okay? 13.1 is my resignation from the library board, which I was very sad to have had to do, but one of the library board members called the integrity commissioner on me, which was thrown out, by the way. But once that starts to happen, once board members on a board that you sit on, especially as the highest ranking elected official, which I think was pretty dumb for them to do it, but they did it. And I got a couple of other letters asking me to list what I did with the $4 million that we've already spent on a library. And there was just kind of wacky letters coming at me. So once the integrity commissioner got involved and someone actually charged me with something that was very liable, actually, and almost slanderous, I had to step away from the board. So with that being said, my resignation is 13.1, and I don't know what council wants to do about the vacant seat on the library board. Councillor House.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and having seen your letter and understanding the content of it, I think it's clear that the library board doesn't necessarily understand the perspective of council sometimes, and I think council sometimes doesn't understand the perspective of the library board. I think both would be fair and true, and I believe that any opportunity that we could take to improve that relationship and those understandings is worthwhile. And I'm sorry to see you leave the library board. I believe it would be beneficial for us to have an additional council participation on the library board. And I just want to put that out there for discussion.
I know that Allison's going to speak to it. I think it was terrible. I stepped away from the library board when we were doing all the negotiations with the two places because I felt that they couldn't speak freely with me in the room. So I took a leave of absence from the library, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago. So I wasn't in their way. I wasn't even in the room. So for them to take pot shots at me after the meeting on the 28th, and as I said, get so upset because they say that we failed them with parking, which is nonsense for anybody who's been paying attention. The parking thing didn't happen that night on the 28th. It's been around forever. So for them to blame me and say things about me, and then, as I said, file a complaint against me with the integrity commissioner after I thought better of them by stepping away from their board so they could speak freely without me. And then they still did it to me. So I have no regrets by stepping off the board. I have no regrets. And if you want to replace me with somebody else, that's up to you. Allison, if you have anything to say about that.
Thank you, through your worship. So the composition of the library board is governed by bylaw. So this was brought up today, and I would respectfully request at this time that this be referred back to staff. We come back with an amended bylaw, and we can appoint another member of council if we like at that point.
Does this take a vote to receive my resignation? No?
I don't think so.
Okay. So it doesn't take a vote. Please pretend you accept my resignation with regret. Okay, I need to go in camera. I need a mover and a seconder to take us in camera.
Wait, we're not done.
We're not done. What aren't we done with?
Allison, we need to move in second and direct staff to return. Okay, that's what we're going to do, okay?
I was kind of looking forward to some drama.
Oh. Okay. My computer keeps freezing and falling. We do have to have a vote. I'll read it. Could you read it, please? On my computer.
That staff be directed to return with a staff report and an amended bylaw.
Everybody's clear? Call the vote. I'm sorry, I need a mover and a seconder.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I've been kicked out of that program 3 times tonight, so I'm not logging back in.
Yeah, I've just been kicked out again for the 4th time. And I have to log back in because I have to finish the meeting. Councillor Oakley.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, just while we're on other business here, just a note to Clerk's Department. I have noticed, I believe it's just the Windows machines that have been having issues. So perhaps we need to have a conversation with the vendor on whether or not that is a known error with the Windows version. And if it's all stable on the iPads, then that's
The iPads have been fine.
You've had some.
No problem with the iPads.
No problem. See you, Councillor, or Mr. House.
Should we just do it by hand now?
Vote.
Forget it?
Yeah, because some of their monitors aren't working.
Okay, so we're just gonna close our computers. We're gonna continue the meeting like we always do. Hands in the air when you need them in the air. Are you ready? I'm surprised it took that long. I'm looking for a motion. Hey. We have to vote first with our hands.
Yeah.
All those in favor? What are we doing? We're sending it back to staff to decide whether we want another member of council to replace me if I am timely leaving of the library board. Takes us to that was our other business. I need motion, take us in camera, Councillor Pierce and Councillor Coleman. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're now going All right, good. We're back in open session of Brent County Council, March the 25th, 2025, I believe. We're now going to do the bylaws. Which is number 15. Who has the bylaws? I need a mover and a seconder. Mover and a seconder just to get it on the floor. And then who's going to read the bylaws? Councillor Chambers moves that they've been read the first time. All those in favor? Councillor McAlpine, do you want to make a motion to accept the second reading of the bylaws? Are there any questions to the second reading of the bylaws? Seeing none, all those in favor of the second reading? And who wants to do the third reading? Councillor Coleman's going to do the third reading. Are there any questions to the third? Oh, you can't do that. All those in favor of the third reading? Oh my goodness, thank you. Is there anything else for the betterment of the County of Brent that has nothing to do with the John Noble Home and or the library? No? Next meeting is going to be call with the chair next meeting. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Kyle, you're adjourning us.